Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now April 27th of 2023, and we are just a short number of months away from the Ahsoka Tano series debuting on Disney Plus by this August, by the way, which is really going to raise the bar by Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau and exactly where Star Wars is heading for the fans to actually witness. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future Star Wars updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. Now, there's a lot of things happening with the whole entire situation between Pedro Pascal, Kathleen Kennedy, and Skeleton Crew dead smack in the middle. The whole fired situation for Pedro Pascal portraying Din Djarin in that show. So, as you all know, Din Djarin is a well-established character at this point. We know that he is in Mando seasons 1 through 3, he's in the Book of Boba Fett, and there's a lot of other projects that will be featuring this character again. Now, one thing in particular that has been a very rough road for Pedro has a lot to do with Kathleen Kennedy firing him, specifically from Skeleton Crew. We've talked about this on and off, but the recent developments surrounding this actually leads to Kathleen Kennedy attempting to do something truly horrible that I believe would have been a nightmare, not just for the executives over at Disney if this actually fell through, but also for the overall fandom. Alright? Now, though Pedro is not coming back for Skeleton Crew, he's all done with this project, he's not going to be joining this project after he was let go by Kennedy, but we're going to be going over what Kathleen Kennedy specifically and really wanted to do to his character that really caused a lot of conflict between himself and Kathy herself as well. So, with Disney and Lucasfilm now developing multiple new Star Wars shows for the fans, creators Jon and Dave are prepping to make big announcements this year. However, behind the scenes between Kathleen Kennedy and Pedro Pascal, and the whole fired situation relating to Pedro over the Skeleton Crew series, things just got worse for the scenario and what has been going on. As it turns out, after Pedro was let go from the series after challenging Kathleen Kennedy to give him face time in the show without having to wearing a helmet, and also her plan to downgrading him as a voice actor, Kennedy also was planning to kill off Din Djarin inside of a starship explosion to make him seemingly dead in the series, but it goes beyond this. However, as it turns out, the truth behind this is that Kathleen Kennedy didn't plan to make Din seemingly dead. She was planning to end the character for good in the entire Mandoverse, and that this caused a very rough tension between both Pedro and the Disney executives. Even the executives thought this was an awful idea, and Kennedy's excuse was that Skeleton Crew would have a massive time jump so that stories could still be told about Din well before those events that would be done by Jon and Dave. The executives still weren't going for it and decided to actually intervene Kathleen Kennedy to reverse those plans after firing Pedro over the little footage that he had actually shot for his cameos. So let me stop right here for a second. So we talked about this the other day that they, or Kathleen Kennedy specifically, wanted to make Din quote-unquote seemingly dead, but as it turns out, the truth is she wanted to literally kill off Din Djarin in Skeleton Crew to get rid of him entirely, as she felt that this character was being overused, that there was not much to tell about this character, stuff around those lines, and maybe you guys agree or disagree with that, I don't know. But I think that Din has a lot more adventures left within him that he could really take up, as long as the writing is good, as long as the story is good, and the character development is there. They have a great shot at really just keep on making stories surrounding Din. So I'm glad that the executives stepped in and prevented this from even happening in the slightest, because what Kathleen Kennedy did want to do, even after Pedro was fired and let go, she wanted somebody else to take over the role of Din Djarin inside of the Mando suit to portray him sacrificing himself on top of that starship. And this starship that we talked about a couple days ago, by the way, belongs to Thrawn's forces, led by, of course, the stormtroopers that are under Project Necromancer. Now, we talked about how Din would be taken on board as a prisoner and stuff around those lines. That was the overall scene preparation for Din eventually sacrificing himself. Now, on top of this, Pedro Pascal alright, seemingly was not aware of this big twist in the show, as he only shot a portion of Skeleton Crew and was stepping on board as prisoner to one of Thrawn's starships, led by Necromancer stormtroopers carrying him on. That's all that Pedro really shot for the setup to Din's death. Kennedy and John Watts were figuring out the rest with another person in the Mando costume after he was fired, sacrificing himself as Din. Kennedy purely wanted to end the character and his path, as she felt his journey is so limited that it needed a cap at some point in the timeline to prevent John and Dave from creating endless repetitive stories of Din and Grogu. This was something that reportedly really bothered Pedro to the core, and he even went as far as attempting to quit from The Mandalorian Season 4, but that's all settled now, and still he is returning after Kennedy backtracked her plans of killing off Din after Disney's interference. So, before I get to the next piece about this, let's just say one thing, is that so that is the top layer of what Kathleen Kennedy really wanted to do. We talked about this 4 days ago or so, that Kennedy wanted to make Din seemingly dead, kind of like how Gideon right now is seemingly dead in Mando Season 3. Wanted something to do like that, except now, as it turns out, Kennedy wanted to make it definitive that Din was no more, that he was truly gone, and he sacrificed himself saving the children, and Jude Law's character, dubbed the Teacher, who, by the way, is a Jedi, or at least was a Jedi. And so it's really interesting that she was going this far to kill off this character, because her excuse was Mando was going to be based well before Skeleton Crew, alright? So kind of like insisting that Season 3 of Mando would be placed way before Skeleton Crew. So Skeleton Crew would have this massive time jump where Din's death would mark itself as a cap of where Din's life ends, essentially, where you can't go past that point in time where Din is having a lot more adventures. And you know what? I'm glad that Disney destroyed that boundary, and they destroyed Kathleen Kennedy's overall plan to... Basically what she was doing was she was putting a flag in the ground and saying, you cannot pass this point of Din's adventures. That's basically what was happening here in this whole scenario. And it's just unfortunate that this is how far she was going on to really kind of just end Din's life and everything related to, you know, the overall adventures of Din and Grogu. She felt would be way too repetitive if she didn't make that cap. Now look, I think that John and Dave can very well think for themselves if things are getting a little bit too repetitive, and as you all know, Mando Season 3, it had Kathleen Kennedy's work all over it. She had a lot of involvement in the script. We can't really blame John and Dave for what happened with Season 3 entirely, and so that is just one little example there, you know, about how Kathleen Kennedy just seems to not respect the creators. She does not seem to respect the actors portraying these characters, realizing that some of these roles of theirs are very well respected among the fandom, and it really made their careers, you know, boom. So this would have really messed things up for sure. So overall, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this below in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again. No.